Hi,
Hello.
we're live.
We're
Maddie,
not
oh,
that late. Like if we think it over, we're not that late. The man
yeah,
Robert saying Matty, except Robert, you put Marty, which come on, Robert.
that's a classic.
Classic,
Um,
classic dig. Probably running late. I was the guy running late. True. Guilty.
no, it was my fault though that the aiming point was 7:30 though, instead of 6:30. So I'm still culpable in some way.
I made the thumbnail. Everyone needs to like the video. I made a thumbnail. Doesn't it look great?
I can't see it because I'm on the StreamYard link.
Well, Robert, Marty is also, I think Steve Jobs had a nemesis called Matty because the iPhones autocorrects Matty to Marty. I get a lot of Marty.
Yeah, and now it's like a running joke. That's your alter ego. Um,
Yeah, it's
Echo, are
it's
we
a funny
echoing?
joke as well.
Are we echoing?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Now, Maddie, something our little Seattle Overload audience may not know is that you are British. You're British. What's that like? So how is that?
Well, honestly, Griff, I've never known anything different.
Is that right? And have you always been British?
I Yeah, well, that's what I meant. I've never known anything different. Like,
Oh, I see.
I mean, I
Interesting.
guess when does your memory, when does your consciousness actually start? There's these things. Maybe when I was like 2 I wasn't, but as far as I'm
Now,
aware, like I haven't gone back, and the hospital I was born in has been knocked down, so I wouldn't be able to do some
oh,
deep
really?
digging. But I
So
am.
there's no proof that you were actually born.
I mean, there is some proof. Like there's a birth book and records.
But what if the records were destroyed in the demolition? Unless are you suggesting they make copies? Then yeah, that makes sense.
I have been told
Um,
I actually look like I might be from the Balkans at times.
isn't that funny?
Isn't that funny? And there are certain events which we don't have to get into, but there would be events in the Balkans that would mean that it might be good reason to hide the fact that I'm from there and actually am British, if someone wanted to
Hmm.
change that.
I
But it
mean,
seems unlikely.
Britain is an ethnic melting pot. Anyway,
It is. It's one of the best parts of Britain, yeah.
yeah. Um, what was I going to say? I was going to say something really insightful and important and compelling, and then I just lost it. I hate it when that happens.
There's a lot of like the comment section is being highly offensive right now.
Maddie did get a haircut. He does look good.
Yeah, that was lovely, Jen. Thanks.
Yeah.
But the rest of it is I don't know, man. Okay,
Oh, I
let's just
forgot. No,
answer
no,
the
no,
food
no, 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 no,
question.
no, 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 no. I got something else. I forgot to mention on the last episode, last Thursday, not yesterday, but the previous Thursday, I was on a hike and I saw a cougar, a mountain lion.
Not the first cougar you've seen, is it?
In the woods. Yes.
Wow, but like
So it
in
was no,
yeah.
it was the first time I've ever seen a cougar ever in the woods. I've seen them once driving, and I've seen them at the zoo. But I was just coming down the trail, and I've seen bears, black bears, so many times, which is always an uneventful interaction. They just stare at you, look at you, walk away. I've even ran into them with their cubs. They're not aggressive at all. They're just scaredy cats. But I saw a cougar, and I was coming around the trail, and by the time I saw it, it was already running. It actually was jogging, looked over at me, and then it looked away and then started sprinting. That was terrifying because if it wanted to kill me, it could. It just didn't feel like it. So it was very nerve wracking. But
How big is a cougar?
this guy was probably 150 pounds. He was
Oh,
150. Just a ball of muscle. Like coat was
yeah.
shimmering, like it was eating good.
That's a lean 150.
Yeah. Yeah. And then yeah, I saw the remains of the deer and like intestines and like other organs. Pretty wild.
Well, it's good you're talking about it now. It's taken you a week to sort of pluck up the courage, but it's important that we talk about these
E-
things.
So every time I go back to where it was,
Oh
I get
no.
nervous
Mm.
to where I saw it. So I make a bunch of noise. I carry a stick. I call it my stick of delusion because it makes me feel safer, even though I'm sure it doesn't do anything by way of
Well,
making me safer.
it's good. It's like exposure therapy, right?
Right. Oh, okay. I remember what I was going to say earlier that I forgot. So on the topic, the riveting topic of and newly revealed topic of you being British, when does the English identity start and stop, and then when does the British identity pick up, or do they coexist? Do they conflict with one another?
I don't understand the question.
So you don't go around telling people you're British. You go around telling people you're English when that comes up.
Right.
So the concept of being British is just silly to you, isn't it?
Well, no, actually, to me, well, this is going to get political though.
Well, actually, because it's great though because it's implying like togetherness, a united concept of like this is our like we belong to each other. We have a responsibility to one another.
Exactly that.
Yes.
And the fact that England, Scotland, and Wales are together is quite a cool concept. But how long that will remain is a separate issue.
Do you really think that there would be different sovereign nations on the main British Isle, like the
Have you
big
not
one?
heard of Scottish independence?
Yeah, right. But like, you guys are they no longer in the UK officially?
Well, they didn't. Griff, you're showing a lack of knowledge here.
I'm setting you up. I'm
Well,
the
they had a
interviewer,
referendum
right?
and they very narrowly voted to remain. But I think they'll probably have another referendum now that Brexit's happened, and then they'll probably leave,
See that is
which would
so
be
much
very sad.
paperwork. Yeah, it would be
But I
sad.
also, if I was Scottish, would I vote to leave? Probably, because,
Yeah.
and I told you this was going to get political. Now,
Now, would they
we're going to
leave
get
and
loads of
join?
dislikes in a second.
Would they leave and then join the EU? Is that why they want
Well,
out?
the other thing is, well, partly that, but also the other thing is Scotland generally is quite left wing, and
Hmm.
England is very conservative. So Scotland sort of ends up with a very not representative, like laws, decisions made from, and obviously
Hmm.
devolution exists, but generally speaking, England's a bunch of Tories and Scotland is not. So
Yeah.
yeah.
There you go. Good stuff.
Anyway, we don't need to get into this because
Don't you? What do the Scottish think about the prospects in this NFL draft, especially at edge?
well, there are a few Scottish players in the NFL, aren't there?
Yeah, I remember us talking about this last last draft season.
What happened to David Ojabo?
He a Raven?
Yeah, he is, right, and he's recovering from a. Did he do his Achilles? Yeah,
That is so brutal.
it is. It really is. I mean, he's technically Nigerian, but he grew up in Scotland. So anyway, there was two questions, Griff, that I think we have to answer.
Okay.
In my unbiased opinion, how is beans and toast? Well, it's beans on toast, and little Italians have like cannellini beans blitzed up on toast, which is very tasty with olive oil and maybe like some oregano or
Nice.
rosemary. That's very delicious. And
Oregano, interesting pronunciation. I say
yes, because
oregano.
I am British,
Yeah.
so
You're British? I'm American. That's crazy.
that's wild, isn't it?
A whole ocean might separate us, but you know what unifies us? The sport of American football.
Yep. And then Matty, have you ever had a Wigan kebab? No. Right, there we go. Excellent. Okay. Should we do this? I was trying to get my. Oh yeah, there's my note.
We can do it if you can stay on topic and stop talking about how British you are.
I hope you had a good birthday.
It's very kind. Thank you. I had a good one. And you didn't have to get me anything. It's fine. It's always next year.
I'm only going to pronounce these words if you donate. I'm not pronouncing them. You have to pay me. I'm a performing British person. Okay. Welcome to the Seattle.
I'll say them in an English accent for free.
Yeah, no, it's okay. You don't have to do that. Let me start the podcast, please. Welcome to the Seattle Overload podcast, where we are breaking down the 2023 NFL Draft edge prospects. So that is the outside linebackers in Seattle's 3-4. However, before that, there's a tiny bit of Seahawks news. Marquise Goodwin, who was the Seahawks wide receiver 3 after D. Eskridge got hurt again, and Seattle needed someone to step up, and Goodwin was decent in action last year. He has signed with the Cleveland Browns. He was a free agent. Seattle obviously feels highly about Derek Young, and D. Eskridge is still on the roster. So Goodwin departing, not the end of the world, but he was a nice option. And if there was no salary cap in the world, Seattle probably would have picked him up again. It's just they're up against the cap. They don't necessarily absolutely need a veteran free agent wide receiver 3. And so that's that. Griff, do you have any thoughts on that before the other news?
No, you covered it. He was a good player. We'll always cherish his contributions. If there is one thing to pick from this, is that I like how I said I have nothing to add and then I'm adding things. It's just like we saw the value of what a third receiver that is, that can do some stuff, what it means for the offense. So his exit should mean that they should really try to get a guy that can do what he can do and more, who's also younger and therefore theoretically could stay on the field more and use more. So
absolutely. And on that theme, we are going to be talking about the draft, and we're talking about edge rushers, and some of these guys could have made interesting tight ends or receivers, but draft Michael Mayer.
Absolutely draft Michael Mayer. Yeah, he had really good numbers come out today. It matches the tape. He tested between the combine and his pro day identically to how you would hope he would, based off of his tape.
Yeah, he's slightly more wiggly on tape, but the fact that he runs a sub 7-second 3 cone and a 4.2 or 4.3 short shuttle, that's kind of confirmation of the wiggle. And then 4.7 40 is fine.
At 250,
he's testing across the board. He's like a above average athlete. Well, even like good to very good, right? If you go on Math Bomb, Kentley Platt's RAS scoring, relative athletic score.
He's like a 70-75 percentile athlete, which is firmly above average. It's nothing. It's conventional, like not like you've never seen it before. But for his play style and his skills, like it augments everything else that he can do.
There you go. And maybe that maybe that receiver 3 is a wide receiver instead of Mayer. I don't think you get quite as much ability to get that person snaps than you would getting a top tight end, given Metcalf and Lockett still exist. But Zay Flowers, I haven't seen his numbers out of Boston College's pro day yet, but Zay Flowers obviously an option. And then Jackson Smith in Jigba, Jordan Addison, some intriguing names too. We will be talking about the wide receivers. But the other thing is Seattle's front office, Pete Carroll, John Schneider, everyone else, they are being wild out here, and they're just deciding to go to each pro day of the quarterbacks. So we got a great picture first with CJ Stroud. Then we got a fun one with Bryce Young. And now recently it was Kentucky's pro day, most recently. And so they met up with Will Levis. Griff, are they going to take a quarterback at 5? Is this a bluff to make teams trade above them? Is this a double bluff because they do want a quarterback? Is this a triple bluff? A quadruple bluff? What are they doing, Griff?
Man, I don't know. I think we have to at least entertain the idea that they would, because, you know, it's like, yeah, you rarely ever get to pick 5 overall, and especially there's 4 high-profile quarterbacks, and the Cardinals aren't going quarterback, so you might be in play for one of these guys. So probably just out of due diligence, you have to know what you're working with there. Because what if they just fall in love with the guy? But I think that it's more likely that they're putting on the guys that they want a quarterback and are really, really, you know, either wanting teams to jump them to increase their trade back value, or they want a guy to fall. So, you know, plus you're going to the pro days anyway. You might as well meet with the quarterback. Like, it's not like it costs you anything.
Well, they didn't take a picture with Anthony Richardson, but I would say this is
True. But they met with him at
more.
the combine.
Yeah, this is more. It seems to me, as we've discussed previously, if the Cardinals trade out of 3 to a quarterback needy team, and the Raiders did sign Jimmy Garoppolo, but they could still be that kind of team to do that. It's not too big a jump for them. Then Seattle might or should have the first non-quarterback pick of the draft. So there's obviously good reason for them to be doing this. And I do think, yeah, Richardson's pro day is still to come. And there's the other guy as well. The other guy that's so disrespectful. Hendon Hooker, like where do they draw the line? They should do it with every quarterback. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
My thought is that it's just they're messing around. There's nothing really to lose. But I think if they actually really wanted a quarterback, they wouldn't be doing this. So there's no harm in doing
Well,
it.
if they really did want a quarterback, you have to present as though you like all of them equally so that you don't tip your hand, right?
Well, they failed on that because Greg Olson, the new quarterbacks coach, had different facial expressions. Will Levis' smile wasn't as good as the other smiles, I'd say.
Yeah. Now, if they didn't have Gino, it's funny because you can fashion an argument for every single one of these guys. You know, like just like, what is Pete like? What is John like? Like, you can make that work with every guy. You can make an argument for all of it. Waldron, you know. So I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, I think I'd be of the mind.
For
Yeah,
fun, gun to your head. Which of these quarterbacks would you take if they needed a quarterback? Just what's your knee jerk reaction? What's your knee jerk answer?
Stroud,
Yeah, I'd probably go Stroud. That
but
Georgia game, he was I mean,
yeah, he was so good, but you can't be a coward. So Richardson is quite exciting.
yeah, yeah. And honestly, if Young was an inch, 2 inches taller, he probably is quarterback 1.
Yeah,
But
so we are talking about the edges in this podcast, and that LSU game, they were just plugging the middle up, and he was like, there was a few throws he had where if he was taller or a bit stronger and bigger,
yeah,
there's throws which are completed, but because they're just plugging the middle up and he can't operate in the pocket, and the pockets in
yeah.
the NFL will be even more condensed.
So yeah. Um, and like, back to Stroud really quick. Like, that Georgia game, like that game was a revelation because he finally did stuff outside of the pocket, like which we hadn't
Right.
seen. But he was insane in the pocket too that game.
Yeah,
Absolutely
his
insane.
he was throwing stuff early, like anticipation, throwing guys open, throwing it into the right leverage and stuff, like an
Yeah,
isolated matchups, which
and like
before
move.
you hadn't quite seen that, like, and you sort of had a concern of, oh, is this just like a similar thing to Justin Fields where he has all day and it takes him a while to get through things and
Yeah,
and he's had so much time. But the Georgia game, he was under serious pressure and tight
moving
coverage,
around
and
the pocket was insanity. Yeah, because I mean, that's the Georgia defensive line.
yeah,
But
and I still
anyway,
think he needs to speed things up a bit and get through things quicker. But
whoever takes Stroud, you're talking about year 2 and year 3 with him. Year 1, I don't think the returns will be bad, but I don't think they'll be like what you'd want.
The other thing
But
with
year
him as
two,
well, the combine, when they do all their throwing around in shorts, he was so much like noticeably more accurate than the other guys. Like, I mean, his accuracy's always been a strength, right? But like, it was very, very obvious. Like him, in contrast with like a Richardson, it was like, whoa, this is what a guy who's accurate looks like compared to someone who struggles with parts of that.
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
He has the fewest question marks. Basically, he checks the most boxes, which is important. But
there you go.
anyway,
Right, edge rushers. So when we talk outside linebackers in the Seahawks defense, the Seahawks run a 3-4 defense, Griff. What does that
I've
mean?
heard.
That means there's two outside linebackers on the field at all times. Sometimes they will play like a outside linebacker in a 3-4, and sometimes they will play as a wide 9 in a 4-down front, in the 2-4-5 nickel, or even in dime, even front looks as well. This player is kind of like a mix between the old Leo and Sam. When Seattle used to run a 4-3 personnel, and it's kind of 245 to 265 pounds. Guy has to be comfortable dropping into coverage. In an ideal world, he has, generally speaking, speed and get off. They have to have a good speed rush, get off, some bend, and then they have to be able to set an edge. If they're going to play on early downs, they have to be able to be the edge setter and be strong and have effort against the run as well. Anything to add there?
Nope, I agree.
Yeah, and so
Everything.
for that as well, generally speaking, arms of 33 inches or longer are preferable, because without that, then you know it's harder to set an edge. It's harder to unlock certain moves, and Seattle rarely dip below that. They would do that, but again, with the measurements, with all this stuff, it's a kind of a comfort level thing. It's like, well, you're going to spend a top 50 pick on that kind of guy who's not quite the perfect dude in terms of that. Perhaps not. Are you going to do it in the 5th round with like an Alton Robinson? Then sure, yeah. So
Jacob Martin didn't have the arm length that they normally like, but he was what, a 6th round pick. So
right. So who's your favorite out of the edge rushers? And oh, before that, we have covered Will Anderson.
yeah,
Check the podcast out. We did it a few weeks ago. Will Anderson's obviously the number 1 overall guy in this class of outside linebackers, right? He's the number 1 dude out of the outside linebackers. He'll be the first one taken. Tyree Wilson is kind of a big outside linebacker. We also have talked about him, and we'd consider him, even though he's a big outside linebacker, he's almost 5-tech, old 5-tech type, even though he's not. That's confusing. But
he's more like well, it's really quick to define Tyree. Forget about the 3-4, but if he played in the old scheme, he would be a Leo, but a big Leo. But he's a Leo that isn't best as a 3-4 outside linebacker, whereas most Leos would be. So it's like when they had Ezekiel Anza, who was 275,
yeah.
He was a Leo. And even the peak version of Anza would be a Leo. But ideally, he was not in a 3-4. He could make it work. But anyway.
There you go. Okay. So, other than that, outside linebacker wise, what are we thinking of this class, Griff?
I don't think most years there's a square first rounder. I think that you're talking like fringe first rounder, bottom of the first. I think that a lot of these guys, like last year was an average edge class. It was not, at least if we're talking of the sub 265 guys, right? Last year was not bad. It was just average. Like all these guys after Anderson, I would take all of them after Ebiketie last year, for example. Like after Ebiketie and then right up there with Maffei and Drake Jackson. And then you kind of getting into the Benito territory. So Yeah. By the way, Chris Myers asks Keon White. So we're going to do a separate edge podcast where we talk about the bigger guys, like Maddie said, like the tweener types. So, Lucas Van Ness, Tuli Pelotu, Keon White, and we'll get into Tyree Wilson a little bit. That will be like a separate episode. Like right now, we're just talking like the more pure 3-4 outside linebacker fits. So of those guys, I think that the guy that leads off the best of the rest after Anderson, though, is BJ Ojulari. I think we agree on that.
Yes.
So, yeah, we got tape too.
We do have tape. So, yeah, BJ Ojulari, LSU, over 34-inch long arms. He's 6'2", which is slightly shorter than probably most teams would like. But he has that kind of blend of size. What was he? Over 250 pounds.
He was 250, yeah.
Yeah. He has a blend of kind of size and ability to set the edge, some coverage experience. Like they dropped him into the weak hook, the strong hook, curl flat. He looks comfortable doing that. He's got agility, but then also he has the kind of speedy, bendy profile, and his best stuff is like wow kind of stuff. So
yeah,
let's take a look at him versus Alabama. As I figure out the old. There we go. Right. Ugh. Where do you want to go to first, Griff?
I'll let you steer the ship, and then I'll just backseat drive. So I'm putting all the pressure on you, actually.
Yeah, you are.
So we chose some clips where it shows what he can do, but then it also kind of shows the stuff that kind of puts the ceiling, like kind of caps the ceiling a little bit, and then also some of the stuff in between. Because if we just showed highlights, then you think, well, this guy's a top 10 pick, right? So it's like what makes him he probably goes in the 25 to 40 range, right? Overall.
Yes. Yeah. In past drafts, I wonder if he would have been if he'd have been a third rounder, but I don't know. That's pretty harsh. I think he's firmly a second rounder in past drafts.
I mean, last year he probably gets taken right after Ebiketie, and then before Mafe. So he's 18 on the right. So this is now, I mean, you could argue you're cherry picking examples, but this kind of shows that he's a speed rusher. His strength is get upfield, but every speed rusher has to be able to convert some power to unlock everything, like even their speed, to make teams respect their speed more. So this kind of shows like the natural limits of what his body's capable of right now. He really doesn't convert to power that well. Now he is a legit like 21 years old here. He's one of the few prospects that is like a true junior, not a redshirt, not a senior, not even a super senior. He's 2021. So he still has some room to growth, but there's a lot of examples where the tackle is able to stay square in their set and get depth on him.
And this tackle's setting quick, isn't he? Like he knows he's setting up for speed.
So like when they open their hips up, the tackle, they swing that gate open, and then Ojulari realizes he doesn't have the depth on him to run the arc around him. It's like, what do you do after that point? And in this case, he's trying to power him back in. He's not trying to corner with like a knockdown move. With his outside arm, he's trying to power him back in. He just doesn't have like the raw power. Like he has to really gear up for it. He doesn't have like reactive power. He has to almost premeditate it when he does have successful bull rushes. Speed to power.
Is reactive power, just trying to long arm down the chest after he's been set for the speed and it doesn't really hit.
So
and he also is kind of a one-trick pony to an extent, right?
In that, like right now, his primary move is that upfield kind of inside chop, almost cross chop, dip and rip, right?
Yeah.
What he does have he has varied footwork though, so there's different ways to get into it to access that move. So he's not like super, even though he's one trick pony, like his one trick, he has different ways to access it. This is a
Yeah,
good
let's go back
play.
to this is a good example for lack of. I, I don't understand what this timestamp is. Never mind. I'll
Did
go
I give you a bad
to
timestamp?
and bear with us because we do have our notes, but they're I'm driving the ship. It's very stressful.
Oh,
It's live.
Shaq, we are live.
There we go. Okay, so here he is, top of the screen, and this is his like other move to other than just
So
being faster than guys. He loves a ghost move, right?
right, yeah, and you can see like he's not firing off the ball. He's kind of rushing down the middle, almost kind of contain rushing a little bit. But what this shows is that his lateral suddenness to just be able to ineffectively just run around guys. But so he kind of throws an inside shot, but it's really about the shoulder dip and his speed to like expand the suddenness and like how flexible he is at 6'2", 6'3", to get underneath that. And then the natural bend to kind of like run a fish hook angle at the top of the arc. And
Yeah,
I was just using this.
without the chop, he's exposing his pads at like a dangerous rate. Like he has the chop to try and keep play long for a bit longer. But
Mhm.
yes, sorry, you're saying.
No, I was just saying like this, like I was just using the Bama game because it just kind of shows like an array of things. And like he has better reps where he's more focusing true get off, but like that rep just kind of shows like what he can do at the top of the rush is pretty impressive.
Yeah, this is a believer in and out inside chop.
Yeah. So
With
he uses a
the
hard
grip,
jab step, right? And so it sets the tackle up, it freezes the tackle. And when it's
stops
time
the
to
feet.
expand, yep. And he even can use his outside arm to keep his pads clean. And for a guy that doesn't have a lot of like true corner moves, he just has tricks with his inside arm and outside arm to be able to do this, to kind of win with this one move, which is really a dip and rip, the hand timing. So he's not just like, oh, I didn't win with speed, I'm done. Like he can do things with his lower body to set himself up.
Yeah, and this is pretty interesting. And if you think where Bryce Young was in the pocket, he's probably getting there without the movement. And he has better ankle flexion, like bend reps. This is
Right.
like the tackle wins the rep. Well, it doesn't win the rep, but the tackle is able to push him at the end because the quarterback moves up. But you
Yeah. I
think
mean,
with
you could probably classify this as a hurry if you're being generous.
yeah, sure.
And this is like far, far from one of his like best looking reps. It shows the traits though.
Yeah, I want to get to the Mississippi State game after
Yeah.
this.
Because he goes crazy in that game.
Yeah. Here he is at the bottom of the screen. And this is when he's sort of able. What's the down and distance here? First and 10. I don't know. I maybe they got a pass indicator because this really feels like he's rushing off the rock here.
Yeah. So when you talk about like bend through contact, it's once you get position, how well do you sustain it? And this kind of shows how he really has to, because he gets ridden down a little bit, right? Like the tackle's able to
Yeah,
recover, get hands on him, and push him back. Now, he does make the quarterback step up, so it's better than nothing, right? But it just kind of shows that he doesn't have that elite ability to sustain the ground that he wins. He
yeah,
can lose ground.
yeah.
And
And
I think it's just
he,
important to like define the boundaries of like what he is working with. And
right, because he
it's not
misses
a,
with his inside hands here. So because he's trying to get the hat prevent the tackle getting this hand on him. Because he misses with the hand on the he exposed his outside pad is exposed, and
mhm.
at that point, as you're saying, Griff, he doesn't quite have the ability to fully bend through that contact.
And also it kind of shows how his rush style is. He tries to get into the rip before he cranks his hips around, which means that in his rush plan, it doesn't really allow him the ability to use his outside arm to like chop down or club on the outside arm of the tackle. So that's not his game. So yeah, if he doesn't win with the initial
Yeah.
get off, or his jab step doesn't influence, or if he misses with his inside arm, it's just going to be what his speed can do after that. And as we see here, he gets ridden to about 10, 11 yards. But again, on the deep drop, it does make the quarterback step up, but he's not going to be able to impact the play beyond that here.
Yeah, as you said, the outside arm only really gets involved when he's jab stepping or rushing on the like a tighter angle.
Right. And he does have quite a few reps that look like this. So this is a representative snap of a larger sample, you know?
Absolutely. So
But like his Alabama game, I think he had a solid game. Like nothing crazy, not bad, but just solid.
yeah, it was fine. It's a good offensive line. There's some reps where it's pretty ineffective looking, and you wonder with like a lot of these guys, you wonder against tackles, you kind of know the plan A of the rusher. How effective are they once like he needs to kind of sharpen up connecting with the chop, otherwise he's going to come into difficulties. So let me get up the Mississippi State game. And if you're in the chat and we haven't explained something or we need to explain something better, tell us and we will. Right, so Mississippi State is not a bad offensive line. For instance, they handled Will Anderson very effectively. And yeah, they did some stuff which was pretty good. So in particular though, this was a game where LSU up, I'll have to check. But this was a game where towards the end, like the last 5 minutes of the tape, is just sort of the peak of what Ojulari can do.
Mm-hmm.
Griff, how much stock do you put in the fact that his brother Azeez Ojulari, second round pick from Georgia, he had more sacks, but then he was coming from a Georgia defense which kind of cracked, right?
Yeah.
So, like, you know, how's he done in the NFL? He had his rookie year, and do you like do you as a decision maker, would you even put any thought into the fact that his brother's in the NFL? Like, I mean, they're both edge rushers. So.
Right. I mean, it's funny because even though they're both like similarly sized, they have pretty different styles. Like Aziz is probably a little bit more technique and strength oriented, and then not quite as bendy as his younger brother. But the fact that Aziz is panning out, if it means anything, it's nothing like but a good indicator, that like there's clear NFL pedigree there. But
So this is a funny rep because he's lined up over the 3 tech, and he's just it's not. I don't know how true this is to the NFL, but you can see the poor guard is very worried about the outside speed rush, so he kind of oversets to the outside. And I mean, this is a good read. I don't think he was thinking inside move initially. I think this is reacting to the set again, and then the club swim. I mean, this is pretty poor guard play, but there you go. Nice sack. As we keep going through the tape. This
also on that one, real quick on the swim move, when the guard tries to recover and he gets his hand on his hip, his vertical path like doesn't change. Like he stays on the path that he's on.
Right.
So that's actually encouraging.
Yeah, it's like the kind of optimal path. There's no sort of running around. This downhill still.
Yeah.
Okay, so here now the ghost move really started to take over in this game, and so did the bends, like more bend than we'd seen. So it was a close game. LSU 17, Mississippi State 16. This is just now he gets helped here because he's kind of pulled around into the bend by the tackle, but it's still cool to see the lower half bending.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the hold kind of helps.
I mean, that's 7-8 yards of depth right there, so that's pretty good.
Yep. So he's kind of got that in him, and it'd be interesting if there are more ways for him to unlock this. Not just from being held around the arc by a tackle, but if he can start leaning more.
Yeah.
Obviously, Seattle's hired BT Jordan as their pass rush specialist, so maybe that does something. And then comes the stuff which really started making me sit up, pay attention, and think this is probably the first guy after the Anderson, Tyree Wilson that Seattle should be interested in. So here, lined up on a tackle, he knows he's got a one-on-one situation.
Is he misses with his hands and yet can sustain, kind of
Leg
his,
turn.
yeah, which is a good sign, because the tackle's got a hand on him, but he's bending that all the way through, which is good. It's not like he's riding a rip per se, but it just kind of shows like he's not, like, even though I really liked Nick Bonito last year, in that exact example, he might not be able to keep his feet in the ground at the same rate there, just because he was a full 10, 12 pounds lighter. Like that, the left arm from 58 there, the right tackle, would have been enough to keep Bonito maybe out of the play a little bit. So even when Ojulari misses with his hands, he can still keep the rush up.
Yeah, because this is going for the outside chop, right? And hence the sort of jump to try and he's going for the chop and then the rip, but then he just reacts into the working the flipper. I think you see chop and rip.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
it's kind of like a swipe really with his outside. Well, yeah, like inside chop, swipe, and like everything is either misses or is ineffective, but his speed and flexibility
yeah, to keep getting the
and
feet in
bend.
the ground, that's like significant stride length as well. That's eating up ground. It's not just
Mm-hmm.
like tiny little steps.
So
So
that's a good rep. Like that's who he is. That's his calling card right there.
right, and so he'd established that like trying to use the hands, so trying to mix it up a bit more, and then here he's started really going for the ghost move. So this is now LSU's up 31-16, fourth quarter, 1st and 10, but they're thinking pass. Like Mississippi State needs to get stuff interesting here. He's rushing from a 3-point because most of his stuff I saw was 2-point ish.
Mm-hmm.
But here when they needed to get off the rock, and this was crazy. This was like I
Yeah.
was like, okay. Now again, I think the tackle holding um is sort of helping him bend, ironically.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the ghost move in action.
I mean, like he can dip under a table. It's so hard for like what helps offset the, we talk about the lack of maybe pure strength, ability to hold his ground when a guy's really on him, is that they can't ever really get their hands on him because he's so good at reducing his inside pad or his inside shoulder. So they can't ever land a square shot, at
Yeah,
least when
like
he
this
does it
this
successfully.
tackle ends up basically grabbing bicep.
Yeah, like he's playing patty cake, the tackle is. He can't really. So he resorts to basically holding him at the end, which, like you said, helps him. But
But it's still, even though he's held, it's impressive that he got that inside foot into the ground.
yeah,
You know, rather than like stepping the outside foot, he doesn't make the quarterback hit here. Okay, and
so
then finally on the Mississippi State game, another ghost move as promised. Here on the right side of the on the left side of the defense. Knows he's probably going to be one on one. This is
yeah,
where he's feeling himself.
look at the recovery when he stumbles too. Like that's just crazy body control.
Which again is like what we just saw the previous play where he had he got his inside foot in the ground and stayed up long enough to hit the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Here he's got he's dipped under the tackle in an even more audacious way, but he's able to stay balanced. He gets shoved. This is basically a block in the back.
Yeah.
And he still stays. He's able to recover, stay up, and finish the quarterback. Which, yeah,
Um,
pretty special.
What's funny is the tackles know this is coming too. Like they know, like he's gonna dip on me. Like also
Yeah,
his
look,
first.
him staying patient for it. He's like, okay, he's wider than I expected, but I'm just gonna try and push him down as he does that, and he's already
Mhm,
past that point, you know.
mhm. And he knows how to create the angles with himself with his feet again, because like that's not a jab step that time, but he does press the outside foot, outside shoulder of the tackle as opposed to going straight up field. Like Frank Clark just goes straight up field, like the
Yeah,
tackle isn't even there.
yeah,
But even though Ojulari is a speed rusher, rushes speed pass, his first step is always outside the outside shoulder, outside knee, outside foot, whatever the tackle. Before, then he expands and then creates the angle, like reads the angle that he has. Then he determines, all right, am I inside chopping? Am I throwing a quick swipe or outside club, or am I just ghosting? And like here, he's like, oh, I'm ghosting because I actually got the angle enough. He didn't he reads the tackle doesn't kick cleanly. The tackle kind of respects the fact that he's pressing his outside half as opposed to going straight up field,
right.
which is interesting. You'd think the tackle, knowing, like maybe I'm contradicting myself, the tackle knows the ghost move is coming. Why is he not more kicking like at a 45-degree angle? Maybe it's just a bad set from the tackle, but still, nonetheless, Ojulari reads it.
No, but I think it is how he presses the tackle,
Yeah.
and then after the way he gets his head, turning. Generally speaking, where your head points, your body will go and your hips will go, and the way he turns his head to like at this point, that's how he skinnies the corner. His head
Mm-hmm.
points round to where he wants to go. Um, that's how he's able to recover and get his feet in the ground and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, pretty impressive player. Not like a first round pick, generally speaking, but an interesting one where there's stuff you can work with, right?
Yeah. With this draft, he probably goes in the 20s, like the late 20s.
Mm.
But ideally, he go like in the middle of the second most years, I think. But definitely a lot to like. You'd think he'd be right up their alley, right? Looking at their history at the position. So
Hmm. And testing wise, he didn't do the 40, didn't do the 10-yard split, obviously, didn't do the three cone, didn't do the short shuttle, didn't do the bench press. He jumped 32.5 inches vertically, which is disappointing, and then 10-foot sticks in the broad. So, not the best testing, but like nothing like majorly, majorly concerning. I mean, LSU's pro day hasn't happened yet, so at least as far as I'm aware, I know that if you go on Crew Analytics' draft board and which is continuing analysis corpse work there. I know that they have like the vertical to be 33 inches or higher. So that vertical may be a slight problem, especially when we're talking again about a guy who's probably going to be a top 50 pick, especially in this draft. So yeah, something to think about there. Anyway, and I have to say he's not like his I think the reps where his get off looks the best are the reps where he's rushing in a three-man front. Um
mm,
or an odd front, and he's the only edge rusher. So yeah, he's going to look the quickest off the ball if the guy opposite is having one is a bigger body and two is having to contain and also really think about playing the run first. I didn't see like crazy get off or speed really, which is kind of concerning when the
mm.
fact that he is like his main move kind of needs to be a speed rush. So I don't know. Lots to unpack there. And when you think about, are we just saying this because he's the only guy who's 250 pounds or larger? Like the fact that he's
Right.
got a bit more size about him is noteworthy. And like,
Yeah, it matters.
and we should say like Ojulari is, you'd be able to play him on all three downs, whereas the next
Yeah.
few guys you actually couldn't. It's just a fact you couldn't.
Yeah, like speed relative to density and bend relative to density matters a lot as far as projections go.
Yeah.
It's why there's a lot of college bendy guys that are 230 pounds that don't end up doing anything. Some of them do, some of them gain weight, some of them make it work, but you know.
So let's talk about Iowa State's Will McDonald IV. And he stole pretty much all the headlines because he's 6'4". He has almost 35-inch long arms. He is expected to test crazy good. He had a 36-inch vertical jump, an 11-foot broad jump. He had a great Senior Bowl where he flashed some really exciting things. And Drift, some of his best rushes are like, okay, wow.
I mean, he is a so like the big problem with him is he's 240, right? 239 technically. He has a
Yeah.
very similar rush style as Ojulari in that he wants to ghost guys, speed rush, dip and rip. If he can, just completely ghost them, like no contact at all. I mean, his game is running around people. Um, he's got like a spin move counter if he needs to, but he's not very stout. If they get hands on him and everything. I mean, his play strength relative to his weight, and also not just his weight, but considering that he's super tall and long, his play strength relative to his density is actually not that bad, but he's not going to be an effective player in the NFL at 240. So he pretty much has to put on weight. But the amount of reps that he has, like this one, against good college tackles is staggeringly high, and you straight up can't ignore it. And I think the one thing that will make teams kind of be okay with the weight is that he's really long too. It would be one thing if he was light and not super long, but the fact that he has incredible length means teams will probably be okay with it. And I like this rep especially because, like, and again, I'm contradicting myself. So, like, this is him. This is him being able to deal with some contact and be able to survive it and still maintain his path. So,
Yeah, it's
he
again the
fires
length here to be able to employ both arms to stab the tackle basically, and then rip through. The
yeah,
length is such an advantage.
and like his lateral suddenness too, like he expands right after the contact, and then
Right.
which allows him to drop his pads
Yeah,
for
that
that
inside
expansion
foot
step.
takes quite the path. Like that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and then he's bending here at like 6-7 yards, and then look how low he gets for a guy that's a legit 6'4" with 34-inch arms. So like Ojulari, he has incredible like body control and flexibility and bend, but he's probably even faster, even more first step quickness than Ojulari. I mean, legitimately high end stuff. Now, the other caveat with him is he is a 5th-year senior, but he's been productive since his junior year, his true junior year. So he had like 10 sacks and then 10 sacks his senior year. And then this past year, only 5.5, but I think he played less. And yeah, they played him a lot of 4-eyes, so a lot of scenarios where he has horrible angles. This is another example, 3-point stance, where he just gets up field, and it's crazy bend. Now what's cool is that he's getting up field while subtly cranking his toes around and getting his hips around on the guy.
Yeah, and I
So
think
he's
part of this
go
is
ahead.
because he knows that there's a movement coming to from away from him, so he has to crank those
True.
toes. But it's just the fact that he's able to do that, as you're saying. Continue, Griff.
Yeah, and the fact that he can bend around this, like you said, it's a like a line slant. So he's giving 58 width, the nose tackle inside of him. He's giving him width, so he has to expand. But the fact that he can still bend around this is pretty crazy. He throws kind of an inside chop, and then he rips, and then he's just able to bend this. Like, it's insane. The bend is crazy.
Yeah, he doesn't
Um,
even need to really fully land the chop. He's sort of already round the corner by the time that happens. Like,
yeah,
uh,
like it's like just keeping himself clean a little bit with whatever, like the like the speed stresses the tackle.
yeah.
Um,
And so on the weight, I feel like if he could have put more weight on, he would have because Iowa State played him inside so much.
yeah,
Like they play like a weird, well, not weird, but unusual, especially for the NFL. You wouldn't see it in the NFL. Like 3 down linemen, they'll play 5 tech or like 4-eye, and he played that role quite a bit, playing inside in the 4-eye. And if he was going to put on weight for that, he would have done. but I'm not so sure he can actually put weight on. Like, it might
Right.
just be that, some guys just can't, doesn't suit, it's not their body.
Like his body
Especially
type
with
may
him
not
being
be
an
able
older
to.
player, like, you'd expect it to have happened if it was going to happen.
Right. So if
And
he
his
can't,
length
go
did
ahead.
allow him to survive in those
Yeah.
alignments, but like the Senior Bowl, for instance, there's plays where he wrecked the tight end in front of him. And then there's plays where he gets reach blocked by the tight end because he's playing so much for knockback with his length, and he's
Mhm.
trying to make up so much for a lack of size. But like, honestly, I don't think he can play on early downs,
Right.
just because of his run ability. So
Yeah. So like he's not. It's so hard to project him as a 3-down player. So and Seattle probably isn't drafting in the second round. Probably isn't drafting a day one starter anyway, because they
and
probably
and
have that.
he might be a first rounder.
Yeah. Good luck to the team that has to draft him in the first round, though. They must be in a desperate situation. Like, I really like the potential, really like what he could be, but it's just I wouldn't, the weight and the age combined for I don't know if I would take that risk in the second round. Sure. I like this rush though because it's him showing that he can speed rush with contact. Like,
Because didn't he run a crazy 3-cone at his pro day?
he had an insane, like a 6.63 cone, like insanity.
Yeah,
He almost had a better 3-cone than Jackson Smith and Jigba.
which again, that like maybe that's slightly inflated because it's a pro day, but like look, like
Yeah.
you can see it in action here.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then the other thing about McDonald as well. Sorry, go ahead, Griff.
No, you go ahead.
Well, the other thing as well is he's known sort of for should not have done that. He's known for kind of spin move, right?
Yeah, he's got a counter spin.
Yeah, so let me just click that for now. And the counter spin is exciting, but Iowa State did a great job of kind of coaching all of their dudes the counter spin, right? It wasn't just him. There's is it number 13, number 3? Like his running
I think
mate,
3.
who's also
Yeah.
came. I think he also came out this year. And the thing I worry about with him is if you look at his game against Iowa, which I'm going to get up. There was a lot more reps where it's like, and like, don't get me wrong, we just watched him against Kansas State. Kansas State is not a bad offensive line. Like, it's just not. But I don't think that it's quite as representative as the NFL than say, like, I mean, Griff, I'd be interested. How do you assess a rep like this, where what happens is the tackle gets hands on him early? So here he is on the left of the screen. And okay, it's quick game, but misses with the chop. This tackle's obviously setting for quick game, so there's an advantage there where he can get hands on quickly.
Yeah. I mean, it's quick game. So even if he like won the rep, he's not getting to touching the quarterback, right? But he doesn't have a lot of like when he's rushing up the arc, he can't. He needs to clear the tackle. Basically, it's like Ojulari, where you need to be clearing the tackle and then bend. He's not going to be like say Justin Houston, where he can get his hips around and almost be square to the tackle, and then like put his inside arm down the chest of the tackle, and then clear the outside arm with his outside arm, and then bend through, rip through. Like, that's not ever going to be his game. Here, like, it kind of shows a play strength issue, right? So he's doing what he always does, but the tackle has the strength to
puts his hand down his chest.
Yeah, has the strength to survive that, and his right arm goes nowhere, right? And McDonald is, crumples. He literally crumples at the top of the rush. Now, McDonald has like 30 college reps of winning right here, probably even more than that, and bending around. But then he also has, 50 that look just like this too. So that's the That's the range of what you're dealing with. This is where the weight is a problem. This is where the play strength is a problem.
Yeah, right after that rep, he tries like another kind of chop rip move to try and get the hands off him and misses. Oh no, this is a good rep.
This is so. I mean, yeah,
This is
and
a nice response.
yeah, and what this is, I think, is it's his speed being just too much. So even though like the tackle just can't, like the tackle loses his balance because the speed around the arc is still, like the foot speed is still there.
Yeah, look at the tackle really. That's not an ideal position to be in.
Yeah.
He beat to the spot that he wanted to be at. And his weight distribution is not what he'd want it to be at either.
Yeah. And then like McDonald is like falling forward though, granted. Like
Yeah, he
he's
does
not.
lose his balance, but at least it's into the quarterback.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So there are limitations to the McDonald experience, and like I'll find his speed rush, his spin move counter now, because it's encouraging that he does have an inside counter, especially when we're talking about stuff like, you know, what happens when a tackle tries to set him wide or even jump set him to try and make the play strength thing a problem, right?
yeah.
That's exactly what happened. So it's encouraging that he, similarly using his quicks, he
Mm-hmm.
has like a counter to work inside to take advantage of oversetting. And if I just bring it up, where are we? This is absolutely thrilling podcasting. Okay, here we go. Nope. So, Griff, while I find this, where do you think Seattle would Seattle draft Will McDonald?
Um yeah, I think they would. I think that they would be enamored with his length. Like they would be enamored with all the things anyone would be enamored with, the get off, the arc speed, the bend, the flexibility, and the length would be enough to offset weight concerns. Um, I don't think they would draft him thinking he can be like. I feel like they'd be drafting him with the idea of he's a depth pass rusher, but a guy that you can play, hundreds of snaps with. Um, but it would also depend. Like I wouldn't prioritize him over, say, if say you're at 37 and say Mozzie Smith is there, regardless of what you did at 5. I bet they would take Mozzie over Will McDonald. Like they would go interior over him. It would have to be they had to have, well, not regard, if they say they take Carter at 5, then maybe they consider taking McDonald at 37 or a bit later. But I feel like they would not prioritize him. He would not be the first pass rusher they take. He'd have to be like a luxury pick almost.
Yeah, and this is an interesting thing as well. So when a tackle gets the inside arm and stabs the inside arm, it's sort of where it really highlights the issue with his play strength, or like when he doesn't connect with the hands. Well, because he's aiming here for the. I think he thinks that he's going to get the outside arm contacting him first, so he's aiming to free himself with the spin move. He's aiming to chop with the to hit down with his left hand here and strike, and to therefore keep his pads clean. He can then spin through into the backfield. But I don't think he expected this inside or near hand to be the first point of contact. So his club misses, and the tackle is able to switch back and is square.
Mm-hmm. Now, another thing though with McDonald that we should probably mention, because even though we're focusing on them as pass rushers, and you did talk about him as a run defender, but like that length will definitely be a huge advantage for him on perimeter plays, like when things get strung out, think jet sweeps, when plays break down, like we've talked about last year. We talked about how On day 3, you just want athletes who can just do things in space at outside linebacker, even if like just to play snaps. He can do a lot of those things. He can just make things happen out on the perimeter. Because again, like that length and speed is special. So
Yeah, even like play action where
yes.
he reads past set late. Like the length just helps him, say, especially if he's blocked by a tight end or like a wing. If he reads past a bit later, then he can disengage so quick from the blocks, and we know he has the kind of short area quickness, agility to kind of bend that edge too. There's a lot of plays where he sheds blocks late, well, like in the Senior Bowl when they were scrimmaging, and wins sort of late round the pocket for like a late pressure or play action pressure. So there's definitely like stuff there. It's just I don't know if I don't know if it's what Seattle needs, if it's the gamble that if it's the gamble that they're comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what drafting is like. It's sort of measuring risk and yeah. Again, boring answer, but is this like a case of it's you need to know the character? Like, I also don't know what his ceiling can be and what his. I mean, that's kind of dependent on how much weight he can put on, right? But like, and if he can, but I
Yeah.
don't know. If you cannot be relied upon to be an early down edge setter, which, like as I said in the Senior Bowl, he's getting great knockback against tight ends. His pad level's there. His hand placement's great. He's just longer than them. He can really drive them back, but he's playing so on the edge of that sometimes he'll get reach blocks, combo blocks are like going to be a problem. Like he against a tackle setting the edge, okay, he'll have length, but just the lack of play strength, even with him, playing with the technique to get the most out of his anchor, he's just ultimately not going to be able to stand in there.
Mm-hmm.
Well then, how viable is a kind of pass rush specialist guy? Like, I don't know how much you can get
Right.
from that. So
Right.
it's an interesting kind of discussion with him.
Right.
And there's more glitzy spin move clips, but I think we're sort of done with him. Right. So
Yes.
Nolan Smith. Georgia's Nolan Smith was the combine star. We talked about Will McDonald earlier, but Nolan Smith lit up the combine like the fastest 40. I think he'd been kind of elevating slightly in terms of draft discussion, but this took the hype to a completely different
Yeah.
level. Like a 4.39 40-yard dash at 6'2", 238 pounds, and a 1.52 second 10-yard split, a 41.5-inch vertical, and a 10'8" broad jump. That's kind of crazy numbers.
Yeah. He of all these edges after Will Anderson, he is the best football player. Like he's a great football player. He is just severely underexperienced and underdeveloped as a pure pass rusher. Um, like he wasn't productive in college volume stats or rate stats. Now he actually did have a high pressure rate, but I wonder this past year, I wonder how much of that is just a small sample size because he was hurt and then like getting free against like play action or on stunts or loops. Because part of the reason why he's so underdeveloped is that Georgia didn't really let him rush. Like they let the guys that come off the bench really get after it on third downs. He has so few examples, so few true reps. And it shows. So like the main drawbacks are he's 238 pounds and then he is raw as an edge rusher. But again, he has all the requisite traits outside of weight that you could want in terms of get off bends, flexibility, body control, balance, all of that stuff is all there. He just doesn't know how to rush tackles really well. But then occasionally he'll have a rush that is so out of this world impressive, where it's like not even like what's so impressive about this rep is that it kind of shows the lack of that he's not very heavy handed, but he throws a stab club and the club doesn't really work, but the speed and his hips and toes are getting around the arc at the same time while maintaining speed, that he's able to hold his ground with his long arm and then bend and dip at the same time. It kind of just shows that he does have really good play strength for a guy that's 238. And when he wins position, especially, and the idea is like if he can pack on 10 pounds, he might really have some stuff, working for him.
Right, because the idea of being like, if he's slightly heavier, then he can do this even with even closer angles and with even a higher chance of success on more plays, right?
Right, just more frequently, like seeing more of this. The problem is like his really good reps are really good. You just see so little of it.
Yeah, and there's plays where he gets knocked over and
Yeah, like his ability, like look how low he gets while still being able to keep his feet churning, right? And he's using like the tackles like his counterweight that's allowing him to stay upward. Like look how tiny he looks though at the same time.
yeah, like it'd be interesting what his playing weight was because he's under 240 pounds, but I'd say he's playing like 230 and
He's
even
230
smaller.
right here, dude.
He looks,
Like look at Robert Beal on the left side. Like Beal is not big at all.
yeah, he's just tiny. And interesting, like Georgia didn't play Smith as often as you'd think for a guy who tested so well. Like, not only did they not give him as many rush opportunities as you'd think, but like they kept him off the field when they're expecting run. Obviously, it obviously depends on the formation too. But like he was like a situational player for Georgia, and
Yeah.
so he'd be a situational player in the NFL. You'd think. I just don't see how it's viable, and there's even talk of like moving guys like this to like an off-ball position. I think Mika
Yeah.
Parsons has sort of tricked people into thinking he can do that of anyone.
It goes without saying though, he is an awesome run defender. But again, I don't 238 translating to the NFL, it's not going to translate 1-to-1 per se.
Right, like this is an impressive rep against the tight end combination block to string it out. But I've seen also plays where he struggles
It's
to
just the
hold
anchor
up.
isn't there. Yeah.
And yeah, look, he even here this is helped by the fact that the run is sort of bouncing away, but he's struggling with the anchor here, and
And to the boundary as well, so it's
yeah,
less space to deal with. Or no, not to the boundary, excuse me, but
ball in the middle, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, like they've got like Georgia has him in a shoulder width apart almost. Now he's standing up, but like that's a different play.
Yeah. But
Um,
a good football player, I just don't think. Well, like, could you play him like Mika Parsons? Why is the Mika Parsons comparison so? Well, not comparison, but why is Mika Parsons' success so silly compared to like
well, I mean,
everyone?
Mika. I mean, there's just like Mika had tape off ball, and then Mika's tape as a pass rusher was also better.
Right.
So Nolan is he's a projection completely, but you're talking about an insane athletic profile, and then he's very technically sound against the run and incredibly high effort. So I understand wanting to bet on that. I just wouldn't. I would only take him in the second round. I mean, ideally, I would take him in the third round. Um, but if the Seahawks want to be the team to see what happens with him, I get it. I get the theory, right? So it's just he's not a pick that you take and think this guy's gonna fix the pass rush. Like there's no guarantees here. So
Okay. Well, that's a bit sad. So
he's a
it's kind of,
luxury pick. He's a
and it
luxury
is
pick.
kind of crazy to me that, like, I get he had a good combine, well, great combine, but the talk about like this guy being a, top 20 pick, because that's happened. He like look at the mock drafts. Like, really?
Yeah.
Just don't know about that.
But like the idea of him as an off-ball linebacker, I don't dislike the idea, but that's a total idea as well. It's a total projection. But he can fly, flip hips, run, like he could totally carry 3 up and back, if he has the speed for that. But
Yeah. And so, Griff, the next guy is Felix Anudike-Uzomah from Kansas State. And he is the dude who I really wanted to watch because I was like, oh, this guy hasn't tested at the combine, I don't think, because he's hurt. I didn't see him at the Senior Bowl. I haven't watched that much of Kansas State. Let's see what we've got here. And what do you think?
Overall, I'm not that enthused by him. He's one of the few guys though that is over 255 pounds that is a true outside rusher, a true edge, but he's got, like, he has play strength. He has a complete rush plan. He doesn't have a glaring weakness in that. Like he primarily is a speed rusher, but he can convert to power, and then he can use technique and strength at the top of the rush to create angles for himself. He has inside counters. What the main thing that is hurting him though is that he's kind of stiff at the top of the arc. That doesn't mean he won't win. That doesn't mean he won't win around the arc, but it prevents him from winning as much as he could. It's simply just a weakness, and I think that's, makes him like a fringe second rounder, like second, third rounder. But of this class though, he probably is like Mr. Pass Rush of all the edges. Like, he knows what he's doing. It's just,
Yeah,
I think the traits limit him though.
more like a pull the hips around guy.
Yeah, he has to create, like, or he has to it's like a sudden, like, quantize movement as opposed to like a gradual thing. Did I say quantize? Quantum movement? What am I saying? It's like an overt movement. It's not like gradual or subtle like Ojulari, McDonald, and even Anderson can have subtleties. Everything he does is like a discrete action, if that makes sense. So yeah, he's not super bendy, but there are plenty of guys that can rush the outside path and speed rush it and win, and they're not super bendy. It's just because they use their hands and angles to their advantage, right? But then also, like, against the run, again, he's strong, but he doesn't drop his hips. He doesn't play with great pad level all the time, so he can get uprooted. And then the other question is, for the same reason that he can be stiff at the top of the arc, I don't know if he'd be good in coverage. Again, it's not like the coverage that they ask their outside linebackers to do is that involved, but
No, he does. He just doesn't look like a guy who'd be comfortable in coverage.
yeah.
It doesn't seem like the right fit. I don't know actually what his role is in the NFL, and this is another one who's kind of, his role is complicated, and here's some stiffness showing up.
Yeah, 91 there.
His role is complicated. The projection is complicated by the fact that Kansas State played a lot of 3-3-5 again. It's sort of taken over the Big 12. And because he's often a 5-tech and he's often in 3-man rushes, like, it's impressive that he was able to win, like, as often as he did. But, like, it's not, like, it's just the skill set that they needed him to be. It's just, I don't know what that is in the NFL. It's like,
I mean, I
needs to
think
be
in a
slightly
perfect
bigger and
world,
be a 4-3 end. I don't.
yeah,
I don't.
yeah.
But like, he's not like super comfortable being really wide. I don't think. Like, I don't think that's his
Right.
game.
And I don't
He
think
sort
he's
of needs to be close to
comfortable.
a tackle and pull himself around a bit.
Yeah. I don't think he's comfortable in the 2-point stance either. He wants his hand to the ground.
I was a bit. I mean, it's not his fault that I was expecting exciting things, but I
like,
thought this could be the guy, given his production and his, the talk around him. I thought this could be the guy who makes the edge class better. And it's not quite. It wasn't quite
yeah,
what I thought it would be.
he is the guy though, after Anderson in this weight class though, that can really like put his weight behind movements though. Like, he does have that going for him. I mean, there's like I'm excluding Miles Murphy from that conversation because I think of him as like 270, but he weighed in at 258. He got really light for the combine. I imagine he's probably puts weight back on. Yeah, that's not good. We do have examples of him being a successful pass rusher, though, I promise. But
We do.
not the backseat drive, not the backseat tape grind.
Yeah, well, I need to get up the Texas Tech stuff. What sort of pick is Felix Anudike-Uzomah?
I mean, he's a late second, early third guy. No, he's an early third guy, like on an absolute scale. This class, he probably goes in the second, though. And I don't know if he's a square of enough fit for them to take him in the second. So I would actually be kind of disappointed. I'm kind of talking myself out of him. So.
Oh no, don't say that. I don't think we can. I don't think we can show the Texas Tech game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rip.
Right. Rip. Look on Twitter. There's some more interesting stuff on Texas Tech, but it's mainly speed to power stuff, right? And sort of pulling the hips around, like needing to have contact to unlock more bends, which is
right.
like, yeah.
And like hard quarter moves, like, stab chop, club rip type stuff.
Yeah.
Using footwork, but again, because he has to, because he doesn't have the feet to just, turn the corner like that.
There you go.
So.
Right. Derek Hall, Auburn. He had an impressive combine, which sort of alerted people to, oh yeah, this is a dude who exists. Good for him. He also is long, which we should have said about Nolan Smith. He has under 33-inch long arms, which again, as I said, Seattle likes long guys. And Derek Hall has 34.5-inch long arms. He was 254 pounds, so again, nice size. And he ran a 4.55 with a 1.59 second 10-yard split, a 33.5-inch vertical, and a 10'7" broad. So those are very impressive numbers. And
I'm not positive they all show up on tape, though.
No, and he posted okay agility times at his pro day: 4.14 second short shuttle, 7.21 second 3-cone. But like he just seems. I mean, he has thick thighs. Like he's a thick guy in the lower half, but like he just looks very linear and stiff, and like he does have some get off, and he has he's fluid going for like inside moves and stuff, but he just seems so linear and it's not. I just don't know. I just don't. I'd say he's like a day 3 pick, but
I think so. I think he's like a 4th round pick, but that combine probably shoots him up. I do think he can convert to power some, and I do think that he'll be a guy that develops because he has like he's like laid groundwork to get better at technique. Like that's what like the objectives of the position, like cranking the toes around, the hips around, trying to set up with his inside arm to try to control the block so that he can do stuff with his outside arm. I think he'll get pretty good at that stuff. And maybe he is more athletic than he looked on tape. Maybe it's just more like other things that can make you look less athletic, like, snap timing, stuff like that. I would like him in the 4th round pick. I think he'd be a good player to have on your team and just let him develop, at the bottom of the rotation and then see if the cream can rise to the top with him.
Yeah, and his edge setting was pretty good.
He's a good run defender.
Yeah, really.
And he's young too.
Senior Bowl, and against Georgia, that was a tough day for Auburn, but like he had some solid edge setting reps too. Hand placement's intriguing. He had a rough Senior Bowl in terms of like the one-on-one stuff. He couldn't threaten the corner, so when you can't really threaten the back corner or tackles didn't respect that, he found it difficult.
Yeah.
Okay,
He's 21 though,
he is. He's a senior and he's 21.
I believe so.
Wow, that changes everything. That's interesting. Okay, I get Robert Beal Jr. out of Georgia, number 33. I thought he did more. Like I rewatched him, and he didn't do as much as I thought he had done.
Hmm.
I was a bit disappointed.
He showed up more his junior year, I will say.
Yeah, and I think his because obviously watching Nolan Smith, you watched earlier in the season, like Oregon, South Carolina, Florida, and I think Beal's best football this past year came later in this year, later in the season. Which again, if Smith was hurt, it gives Beal more run, more opportunities and stuff.
Hmm. Yeah.
But he
I did
just
like.
seem I don't know what he's like good. What's his standout trait like?
He doesn't have one. Is the
No,
problem? He's just really, really well rounded.
in
Um,
yeah,
he is.
and not like just fine. Like
Yeah, and so he's a day 3 guy, but he's a day 3 guy that I think that you know he can be a rotational guy that actually registers high pressure rates, but not a 3 down player. Um, so if he's there, like Jacob Martin is still making money in the NFL, being a 3rd down pass rusher. I think Beal can be that. He's also really technical too. And he actually ran a 4.49 at a good weight or whatever he ran.
oh,
He's
his
pushing he's pushing 250.
his
So
measurements really they kind of made me more interested because yeah, 4.48 40, 162, 10-yard split, 30-inch vertical. That's poor, and a 10'3" broad. But the 40 time and the fact that he has 34 and 5/8 which is an inch long arms at 247 pounds, like in 6'4", that is like some actual interesting
yeah.
stuff. Where if that's a day 3 pick, then yeah, fine. Like it's a solid football player. He, you know, I just would have liked to have seen a bit more. I don't know what he's good at. Like maybe, yeah, he's just fine.
I mean, what I like about him is that he can actually win in half man. He can get depth where it's not like just blowing by the guy, but he can actually get into half man and corner for his weight, and not at a crazy high rate, but he's one of the few like on the cusp of 250 or just sub 250 who can actually do that. Like he has the skill set for it, and he won't do it at a crazy high rate in the NFL, but he's like a speed finesse guy,
Hmm.
basically. Um,
Yeah, he's kind of yeah,
like he doesn't have enough speed to
yeah.
win with just speed for a living, but he has enough speed to get in position, and then technique can win the rest of the snap. And he won't do it at a crazy high rate, but enough to like he can help augment or supplement a pass rush rotation is how I see him.
He's pretty one speed,
Yeah,
and he plays kind of high hipped. Like I mean, he's 6'4", but he doesn't
yeah, I
really
agree with
sink
that.
as much as I
Yeah, he
don't know.
doesn't get under guys, does he?
No, so maybe
Like
there's
he's not
stuff
a
to
dip and rip.
unlock.
Perhaps.
Right.
But like we're talking 4th, 5th round,
Yeah, I mean, in the mock draft simulators, which are obviously 100% accurate, he's available in the late
like in this.
7th.
I
I
know it's
think
funny.
that's harsh on him, but we'll
Scott
see.
asks in the chat, did I miss the Van Ness talk? We mentioned earlier that we'll do a separate podcast for like the tweener types.
Yeah, Scott, you just told on yourself, buddy.
Yeah.
That's
So
that's poor.
so Van Ness, Murphy, Tui Pelotu, um, Tyree Wilson, although not really him because we talked about him already. There's another name or two, or Adi Adibaware. So we'll do all those guys at another separate podcast because they're not exactly 3-4 ends. They're not exactly 3-4 outside linebackers. So
Okay, We're getting to the closing stretch. It's been a magnificent effort. Right. Other names. Nate Herbig, Wisconsin.
Yeah. So he's short armed, but he can rush the passer. He is crazy productive. He can go, but I feel like he does not hit enough thresholds, weight thresholds, length thresholds. But he can play. He can play football. So he should be like a late day 2, early day 3 priority.
Do I mean Nate?
I don't know,
I
man. It's
mean
probably
Nick.
Nick,
I mean Nick.
Dustin.
That's very disrespectful of me. Nate is a
Is that his brother?
who's a offensive lineman. There you go.
Um,
No, he had a rough. I mean, I think people were expecting it, but the pre-draft process is just like wasn't good for him. Like
yeah,
31 and a quarter inch arms, like that's probably off Seattle's board. Like that's how they view that. I mean, a 1.59 second 10-yard split's interesting, but like it's just too short.
and he didn't run a 3 cone. That's disconcerting.
And the other thing as well is like he struggled in the run game from what I saw of him, like play strength, ability to set the edge. And if you got short arms, that's not going to help. So
Yeah, but if you want to take a flyer on him,
like a little juicy pass rush specialist late on.
So when watching Keanu Benton, he keeps showing up. Like he makes a lot of plays, but it might just be like he's perfect for a college defense, and it may not translate to the NFL.
Right.
It might be a
and
Peter
that's fun
Principle
defense for linebackers.
54 and 55. So what is it?
No, stop.
Injung Meta and Turner, is that their names? Those guys,
No,
if one of those two guys were out, they'd probably be the first off-ball linebacker taken in this class.
And that's a subject for another day, because wow, is the inside linebacker class interesting.
Contact can change direction. They can fly. They can key. That's the thing. They're so smart, both the Wisconsin linebackers. They know exactly what's happening on the field always.
Right. Okay. We're nearly there.
It's cruel. It's cruel that they're not, one's not eligible and one didn't declare. It's cruel.
I'm sorry. Right, we're nearly there, Griff. Brenton Cox Jr.
I have not watched him yet, so I can't comment.
Okay, out of Florida. Because he had like very interesting measurables. 6'4", 250 pounds, 33 and an eighth inch long arms. And then a 1.65 10-yard split is not awful, although his 40 was slow. But
have you watched him?
Well, I know that I haven't watched him, but he was dismissed from Georgia and Florida. So, and a former 5-star. So it's an interesting one.
I feel like the other two main names are Tennessee's
Byron Young.
So he's kind of like he wins with speed, and he superficially seems like he has good bend and arc speed and everything, but he can only win, I've noticed, when he can time the snap up. So he might be a snap jumper. And then he's also like 24, 25. And then KJ Henry was he the Clemson guy? He knows how to rush the passer, but he's also 25. So
Byron Young probably not a Seattle dude because his wrong one. His arms are short. Let me find out how short.
And like they're only okay players anyway. Like they don't change, they don't transform anything. They're just adding to a group.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, I thought Henry would have a bit more about him. But no. There you go. That's the edges. We've done the edges. We're not that excited about them.
No.
So the question, Griff, is if not Will Anderson, who do you want?
I feel like Ojulari is the safest pick of all these guys because he doesn't have a glaring red flag. It's just his green flags are that of like His positives are like second round positive, not first round positive, I think.
Yeah, and like, who is the better prospect, him or Aziz?
Maybe Aziz, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's probably pretty close though. How do you feel about that compared to Aziz?
I think Aziz had more crazy bend and get off.
Mm,
I think Aziz probably is going to test better when it's all said and done. And higher sack production, better defense, younger, I think, as well, coming out.
yeah,
Wasn't he a sophomore when he was drafted?
I don't know.
One of these
Watching
weird.
Julian Love, Aziz makes a lot of plays. And Aziz has power for his weight class that his brother doesn't have,
Yeah.
that BJ doesn't have. So,
But isn't this
but
unfair?
again, I like BJ. I don't know. I don't know. The unless it's Will Anderson, like if they're gonna get better, it has to be from one of the interior guys. It has to be like you're just trying to like get the cherry on top with one of the edges really this year in the
Yep.
second round.
Yep. And yet we've still spent an hour and 37 minutes on this subject. So,
Well,
what's
not
up?
just the subject. I mean, we did
Sure.
learn that we
Sure.
did learn that
Sure.
you're English tonight.
We did. So also we kindly had John Carey with a $20 donation saying appreciate all the content, guys. No problem, John. Thank you so much. That's very kind of you. And we
Thank you,
also
John.
had
Appreciate that.
Jen coming in with a donation. Love you guys. And then I don't know what these emojis are. T, Great Britain flag. Is that a ship? It better not be a ship. Grapes? Wine? I know. Thank you, Jen. I'm sure there's a format where that looks more legible, readable. Anyway.
Now, Maddie, you are British, right?
Oh, John asked a question before his donation, and seeing as he donated, let's answer it. Tyree Wilson at 5, Will McDonald at 20, or Ojulari at 37? You decide. That is a horrid question. I would take Tyree at 5.
So it's Tyree at 5. Who at 20? Ojulari at 20.
Will McDonald.
Will McDonald at 20, and then Ojulari at 37. I might just say just get the best player. I don't know, but of course it means if you're going Ojulari at 37, then who do you get at 5? If it's Carter at 5, I would take that pairing. So here, for the sake, we'll talk defensive tackles, but if the options are, forget about the extracurriculars with Carter for a second. If it's for the sake of like football discussion, if it's Carter at 5 and Ojulari at 37 compared to Wilson at 5 and say Mozzie Smith at 37, I might take the first option. And I like Mozzie a lot. But I think Carter and Ojulari makes you better than Tyree and Mozzie would.
Okay.
Because I think Carter is that much better than Mozzie, even though I like Mozzie. And then I'm just not that sold on Tyree. I like him, but Tyree should be taken in the late teens, early 20s in the perfect world. I don't see. I
don't
don't
live
see
in a perfect world, Griff.
I know. I'm being greedy. I just don't see a top 10 player with Tyree. I see a firm top 20 player. I don't see a top 10 player. He's not that kind of player to me. Prospect to me.
Okay. Final question. Cameron Barron. How does Boye Mafe stack up with this class? Interesting. Well, no one has Maffei's combination of speed and testing. And the thing with Maffei is people will point out when I talk about having less than 33-inch long arms, Maffei had 32 and 5/8 an inch long at the combine. But the Senior Bowl, he had over 33 inches. So I don't know what happened there. But like he kind of had cleared that. But like he tested crazy. I think it's easy to forget that. Now his tape was kind of a very raw football player who was still kind of learning stuff, and
He's
he
stiff
didn't,
too.
and he was stiff. He didn't have the bend that we you'd have liked to have seen. But there was some interesting coverage stuff, and it's just obvious he was a very good athlete. So
And he was 260. He ran a 4.53 at 260.
right. So like, how does he stack up? Well, I mean, he's probably above. He's probably below Ojulari, above Ojulari.
It's probably pick your poison. So it probably goes Ebiketie and then pick your poison between Ojulari and Maffei. And then it
Ojulari's
probably,
testing's just not there
yeah, true.
yet. We have to see what he does at the pro day, but that vert is not good.
Yeah, true.
But because if we rank this edge group, we've got Will Anderson. Then have you got Tyree Wilson?
If we're combining them, yeah, Tyree.
Yeah, and then Ojulari.
I would go Thule. Thule
Oh,
to
just outside line. Don't combine them.
Okay.
Yeah, don't combine them.
So then Ojulari, then yeah.
Yeah, and then Will McDonald.
Yeah, man, that's brutal.
And then Nolan Smith.
I might go Nolan over McDonald just because
Football.
at least you can find snaps for him just because he's so good. I mean, because he's such a good run defender, even though he's light. And then you think just he can figure it out. He can figure it out. You know, I don't know.
Where does Anudike-Uzomah come in here? He's still
See,
around
it depends on what teams value because he's prototypical. He just isn't like that good.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. And Miles Murphy, we've said, is you're classing him as a bigger end.
Well, he's an edge. He's an edge that is just bigger, you know. But like he is so stiff, dude. He can't.
Yeah.
He has LJ Collier level, like pad level problems and change of direction problems.
No,
he's just incredibly explosive in a straight line. Credit to him. But he cannot turn the corner for his life. Like he'll win position at 6 yards and then will finally clear the tackle at 11 yards. It's so bad. So he's like all speed to power, which, yeah, great speed to power. But then he'll get snatched because he's so high hipped, just like LJ was.
Ouch.
Oh, man, dude.
So we didn't talk about Yaya Diaby, who tested well.
He does not play like a good tester at all.
No.
He just doesn't know how to play.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
That's
like
mean.
Not yet anyway. He's raw. I mean, maybe there's something there. And we'll talk Adebore in the other pod.
There we go. There's a few names we won't have talked about, but I think if we haven't talked about them, we view them more as day 3 kind of picks. Right. Well, that's the podcast. Like the video, please. Subscribe to the channel. We're edging out. We've edged out. We're OLB'd.
Maddie, how many umbrellas do you own as an Englishman?
3.
Nice.
Because there's a golf umbrella, right? Like
there's
a sports
what?
umbrella. Then there's like a small umbrella, which is easy to pack away. And then there's another kind of like a more fashionable, like a smart umbrella.
Now, do you have the Union Jack on them? On any of them?
No. But
Good.
one of them kind of looks like a Mary Poppins umbrella. If you want to stick with weird stereotypes, you freak.
Yeah. How do you feel about an American doing a British accent and that an English accent?
Okay, so follow Griff at C Mike Spin Move. Follow the podcast follow me at Matty F. Brown and download the show. 5-star reviews. We get them. They're very nice. Thank you very much. Let us know in the comments how this format worked. If it worked.
Did it work at all?
Yeah, maybe it didn't work. As my
Audio is dying. We're dying. We're falling apart.
It's 4:53 a.m. It's time we left. But thank you everyone for joining. Thanks for the donations. Very kind. Until next time, which will probably be Ty coming back. He's been in Vegas, so we can hear about that. Lucky guy.
Miss Ty.
Yeah, that's if he comes back from Vegas, because like things can happen there.
Yeah, he may never crawl back out.
No. Anyway, until that point where we will have Seahawks news to talk about, and we'll do next week. Griff and I will do interior defensive line /5 techs. Until that point, this has been the Seattle Overload podcast. Have a great rest of the evening. Enjoy Succession. It's coming back.